it's very important to talk about our upbringings in the cinematography space, filmmaking space, because everyone has a different way of how they got into this. Whether it's watching movies, whether it's making home videos. Everyone. That's been the most interesting part, I think, of this podcast is learning how people started, because it's such a wide creative umbrella, so many outlets to get started. So I wanted to know, you said you were a little confused over Apocalypse Now, which kind of like sparked your cinematography journey to learn about the intricacies of film and sort of figure out, what the confusion was. Can you sort of explain what exactly stood out to you in that film and what sort of guided you to go, hey, I want to find out more about this craft?
Yeah, yeah. It's tough because look, I think I was around like 8 years old when I saw Apocalypse Now. And I think what I meant by that quote was that I couldn't define what it was because what I had seen as a little kid were kind of very specific genres in a sense that it was like animation, action, horror. Because my dad did show me all sorts of, like Alien and Terminator 2 and Predator and all that kind of stuff. So those made sense to me because this is supposed to scare me. This is supposed to make, comedy is supposed to make me laugh. And then, yeah, we watched Apocalypse Now, and I think I just didn't know where to put it. Again, articulating that as an 8 year old, like I just
Hmm.
knew that it was however an 8 year old can articulate that. I knew it was special and different, and it kind of really caught my attention and was like it's almost like a meal I had never had before. And I was like, I want more of that as opposed to I want less. And that started the intrigue, and kind of in my adult mind now feels like kind of the beginning of the journey a little bit because I started, asking for more of that. He started showing me more sort of wacky shit, and then that eventually led to me grabbing his little camcorder that he was filming home videos with us with. He's also a photographer too, so I started taking interest in what he was doing with photography. And then I would say it wasn't around until I was probably 12 that I really started making actual like movies with my friends and grabbing, it was like I think the first or second version of iMovie and starting to edit. And, it eventually leads to then getting, I think it was like Final Cut Pro 4. And then my buddies and I pooled up our money together, and because we all were working like different high school
Mm.
jobs, and we pulled our money together and got a Panasonic DVX 100, which was like the camcorder sort of at the time. This is like, I graduated high school 2005, so this is like early to mid, so it probably is around like 02, 03 or something like that. Um and then we just kept making movies and kept doing it. But yeah, Apocalypse Now sort of started that, and I think it was because I couldn't define it. I think it was because it was like nothing I've ever seen had seen before. And I think even if you watch it now, it's like for me, it's one of the best movies of all time. It's so daring and bold and gorgeous too. Again, I can't sit here and say like, oh, the cinematography and stuff like that, because I cinematography didn't really click for me all the way until film school. Even in high school, making the little movies with my friends, yeah, I kind of gravitated towards camera and all that type of stuff. But I think the benefit that a lot of people have nowadays, which is great, is that things like YouTube and whatever else has taken even people in their teenage years and sort of like really expanded their brains about this stuff. I was still in an era where I went to film school, and that kind of unleashed and revealed a lot of things that it wasn't as democratized in that way. Although we could grab little video cameras and have computer editing software, compared to, you spoke to older guys then and they were like, you guys have so much more than us. So it's always kind of leveling up in that way, which I find now getting older fascinating to watch how now the younger generation is taking it on and doing things, and how social media has shifted that. But it's all kind of the same in the sense that you saw something, it caught your attention, and then you just went out and started to make shit because it's fun.
Well, I think, an important thing about those like little home videos you do with your friends is that, a lot of people, obviously we look back at those things and it's like, oh, it's kind of like, fun and stupid, but it is literally like the inception of your craft. Like as maybe silly the beats are in those movies and the shots, it literally got your training wheels going. And I think everyone needs to start that way. I started that way. The biggest regret I have is that I can't find any of it. I don't know when it was
Oh,
deleted along the
I'm
chain
sorry. That's a
yeah, I
bummer.
know. It was with my mom's iPad on iMovie, and I think it like just broke. and then I
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
lost
yeah.
everything.
Sure, sure.
But yeah, those are so powerful. I used to make like stop motion Lego videos
Nice.
where I would just kind of move the character every frame. But I think any sort of thing you do with those things is so important because it literally it exposes you to the very fundamental aspects of making a story. So I think I think that's a great starting point for sure. Where did you go to film school?
I went to School of Visual Arts, SVA, in New York City, right on 23rd Street and 3rd Ave, and yeah, it was cool. My dad had gone there for advertising, and I've looked at colleges all over the U.S. I looked at Emerson up in Boston. I went over to California and looked at Cal Arts and USC and UCLA, and looked at NYU, all that kind of stuff in New York, and he was sort of like, I think you should check out SVA. And it wasn't really on my radar. And I went in there, and the difference was all the other schools had about a year to 2 years of sort of theory and classroom stuff, and throwing on Citizen Kane and like talking about it for a few weeks. Um, and then SVA was like, you get to shoot black and white 16 millimeter day one. Um, and I hadn't touched, I'd been nowhere near film. You have to keep in mind too, this is like, the Alexa hasn't arrived, the Red hasn't arrived yet at this point. It does when I graduated. That was sort of when that revolution like started. So the goal, the pinnacle, was 35 millimeter film. That was like the thing. So to have somebody say, you're going to be shooting film right away, and just I was always learning by doing. I knew that at that point, at least through my experience in high school, was I always was, let me do it, let me see it. Visual learner, hands-on learner, and the fact that I could just get in there. And really, all I've wanted to do since I was that little kid was I just want to film and do stuff. Like I got into trouble all the time at SVA because I would bail on class to go do projects. I can tell you the amount of times teachers like threatened me to be like, "You're flunking this class," and I'd be like, "I'm doing the thing that you guys want me to be doing, though."
Exactly.
And they would get pissed. But so because I got my like 10,000 hours in a way, and it was cool because I got to, or at least I took a big chunk out of it. But it was nice because I graduated SVA in 2009 with a Vimeo cinematography reel, which, in that year, that was
Nice.
like, I got a website and I got the whole thing. That was decent. I look back at it now and it's like, oh God, but it was cool to be that young, to be that age, and to have, just because I rolled up at school and everyone wanted to be a director. And I was one of the very few who kind of quickly realized that I was like, cinematography, that's right for me. And just shot everybody's projects. And so I just got to be on set constantly, and learn by doing. So SVA was great.
I think everyone wants to be a director. It's crazy the amount of people in film school that want to be a director, which is like, I'm not saying it's bad to want to be a director. It's just like explore everything first. So I just graduated Hofstra University in May. And I was a filmmaking major my first semester in, but it just didn't really click for me. I took a few film classes, then I switched to marketing because I thought it was more of a well-rounded degree in a sense, and I could kind of do all those things that I have to do film related on the side because that's when I started, playing around with the camera. And I don't know, the film education didn't really click for me. Were there any moments in the classroom where you were just kind of like, yeah, this isn't really clicking for me? Like, what does film education get wrong in a sense?
So much. I think film school gets beat up a lot, and people talk a lot of shit, and it's understandable.
Hmm.
I think, well, I will say real quick that I want to throw out that I think the values are, you have safety net, and you get to fail, and you get to try and do and all sorts of stuff. Trust me, there's a lot of students that don't take advantage of that. Probably the majority, that they don't realize the privilege that they have. Often depends on the school and the system, but that you have access to equipment and other people and whatever else, and to just work, 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 work. Keeping in mind too that back then having the access to the things weren't necessarily the same that we have now. Like you doing that now, I think makes a lot of sense because, again, there's so many tools and things,
Exactly.
and even just the access to information and education is it exploded, and it's really neat. but yeah, and then honestly, the biggest thing is the network, like the people that you
Yeah.
meet and who you. I connected a lot with NYU kids as well, and sort of my network like exploded from like different years at SVA to different years at NYU, and like getting in my 20s into like the professional world. The amount of people that I knew who also sort of just came out into the freelance world helped a lot with work. So that was major. In terms of what they do wrong, they're always behind the ball on the curve.
Hmm.
Everything's always dated, which teachers, they're older. Like again, even me, I'm 38 now. Like if I had a classroom full of 20, kids that were in their 20, there'd just be this disconnect. So that's kind of natural and understandable and difficult to sort of overcome exactly what to do about that. I'd also say that I have this whole rant about how I think that I think that film school should be focused on, if you're going to do it, because a lot of people wouldn't do it, right? They'd say it's not worth it. I don't want to be in debt. I can just learn by myself, which is totally valid. Nothing wrong with that. There are pros to that. Um, but I don't think that film school prepares people for the real world in terms of like I have a whole thing about like financial literacy in the sense that I'm like we're all creatives, and we may not, if you're going to go into the world and be like a freelancer and how to navigate that. I mean, I'm talking like how to savings and side hustles and taxes and like that sounds really boring and not
Hmm.
interesting. But I don't think film school prepares you for the real world. Like they kind of want to sit around and talk about movies all day. I can do that. I can just like watch movies and have that experience. But how can you prepare me for interviewing, for being financially in a good position as a creative freelance person, to what does it mean to join a union? What does it mean to get a manager? Like all of these like real world things that I remember like messing with a C stand a year out of school on a little set, and I like basically realizing that no one had really ever taught me
Exactly.
how to open a C stand. And I
Exactly.
was like, I've spent 4 years for a film school, and no one ever taught me how to
That
do
thing is
this.
tricky when you start.
Yeah, totally. But like that was a light bulb moment for me in a sense of just like the fuck did I learn there? But
Hmm.
I did learn a lot. That's it's truthful that you do. It just I don't know how to crack that nut. That's a difficult task. And now I know they're getting into some of the AI stuff, and that's a whole debate. But film school is a tough one. Again, I think that you get a safety net and you get to connect with a network of people, and that's great.
Hmm.
But you definitely don't need it. It's
Exactly.
complicated.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
I think, going back to just being more prepared financially, like literacy and all those things, I think any degree doesn't, prepare you, whether not even just film school, any sort of degree you chase, they never prepare you for banking, financials, all those things. Pitching is also another thing that
Yes,
like
pitching would
pitching a
be totally,
project
totally.
to like
Yeah, there's a
investors.
long list of real
Yeah,
world things that they are missing that I think is a shame. That at least your senior year, something that final year, there should be some sort of class that is sort of like, okay, you're going out into the real world now. We're not playing make believe running around with our friends with video cameras anymore. Like we're doing a real thing here. Here's things to look out for. And I've never heard of a film school doing that. Maybe some do. I've never heard of it, and I think that that's sorely missing because I watch a lot of my peers and friends and collaborators of mine. We figured it out through our 20s and whatever else, but we should have been guided a little bit more. And I think I was just on set with a 24-year-old she's in the art department, and her and I were chatting, and I kind of tried to give her some advice in a way that I was like, make sure you learn these things because it's important for you to understand them now and not realize when you're 30. Like this will
exactly.
it actually make your creative life better,
Hmm.
because you will be less stressed, you'll be less trying to figure things out, and then you can choose more interesting projects, more sort of freeing, exciting projects because you're in a better position. So that would be something I would definitely, if I was running a film school, I would do something like that. But I don't want to run a film school.
Yeah, I think that'd be a whole nother something to crack. But I think from the film majors that I've met at Hofstra, and maybe it's different from other film schools, but and I also don't know everyone in the film school, but I they generally like tend to be like people who just study the films rather than make them. And I think, wouldn't you agree that making them is much more valuable than just studying a bunch of films in a classroom, just getting like, oh, I know everything about Citizen Kane or like everything about this classic movie. Like it's so much more valuable to make the mistakes so that the movies you're watching, those people made those mistakes that you would make if you were doing the films. That's why their films are the way they are, you know?
Yeah, 1000%. You're almost more learning about how to like critique something and analyze something rather than do it, which those things are linked. So it is important, but they spend too much time in it on it. And the truth is, I mean, it's a lot less expensive to sit in a classroom and like talk and look at stuff to actually go and do things and whatever else. A lot of the time, these teachers don't have that much experience in that kind of stuff, especially with emerging technologies and whatever. So again, it's a tough one to crack, but either way, look, everybody learns differently. Everybody does their thing. I'm very much big on like do. I mean, dude, I even see it with my peers now. I see there's a lot of filmmakers within the community of people that I know who I often will kind of label, this is judgmental of me, but like sort of talk a lot more than do. So
Mm.
they're, I mean, we're on a podcast right now, but
Yeah,
they
yeah.
do podcasts all the time. They write these articles, they do these things, but I'm like, but I don't see you making anything.
Where's the actual
Yeah.
thing? Yeah.
Now, truthfully, making stuff and as you get older and budgets get bigger, whatever, getting movies made is extremely difficult. It's gotten harder than ever, like all of that kind of stuff. But still, I lean in this game, which is why I love cinematography and production and that look, generating your own project and as a director, writer, director, whatever it may be, like having something be, grown from the ground up and
Mm-hmm.
making it is like, my wife's a filmmaker. Like I cannot even, I watch her
Nice.
day to day. Unbelievably difficult. So it's easy for me to sit here and say that, but I definitely often sort of lean a bit more in the like put your money where your mouth is. If you're going to spend years talking about this stuff, like make something, you know?
Exactly. And I think, going back to actually the upward trajectory of learning, I think it's also important to realize that you just have to be willing to make more mistakes than other people because, learning is just making mistakes. So if you're able to make more films, get out of the classroom, you're going to make those pivotal mistakes of, oh, okay, let's not light the subject that way because it does not look good, or let's not shoot at this shutter, or what, all those things that you just will learn by doing, and that is not found anywhere else. These are like valuable lessons that are only taught by doing the thing. You know what I mean? So I think that is so pivotal because you can sit in a classroom all day, you can study all these cameras. It's not gonna move the needle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Just got to get out there and do it.
absolutely. So I think something I that you said that I resonated with a lot is that cinematographers, we can kind of like do anything, but you just have to know like what exactly you want to do and how you want to go about achieving it. Because I think everyone has these grand ideas of what they want to do, but it's okay. Like, how are we going to actually do it? Do you think it's like overwhelming because you're kind of like faced with like, okay, well, obviously you have a direction from the director of what it wants to look like and all those pre-production meetings, but at the end of the day, you have your discretion onto what you want to do. When you started out, did that seem a little overwhelming?
Yeah, it probably did. I'm trying to remember back. I mean, now it doesn't because I think with just the experience
Yeah.
and um, you know, setting myself up in a way with like the questions that I ask and being able to identify certain limitations based on because it's often the limitations sort of start to craft your sort of the trajectory or the creative sort of approach in a way where it starts to become very clear that like okay, we're doing this on location, we're doing this in a stage, we're it's all handheld, it's this, it's that, it's a oneer, it's a whatever the thing may be. That starts to answer so many questions and it starts to really click into place. Okay, we have this low of a budget or we have this big of a, okay, great. Those answers are already there. Like it's very clear to me what that is. But yeah, I would say it probably was overwhelming at some point. I think every cinematographer's had that moment or maybe you're in a challenging moment. Maybe you're just not loving that setup, and you have that sort of sitting there like, oh my god, there's so many things I could do right now. Because again, often as a cinematographer, there's so many variables, and I'm talking more than just like camera settings alone is a lot, right? Your lens, your filtration, your lighting, and then each individual lighting unit, what time of day it is. If it's you're also combined with some natural sunlight coming in through windows and whatever else and what's happening with the weather. But then there's all the other elements of like the other departments. And that is something I think as I've gotten more experience and more time and you really get involved with them and sort of watch during prep to ensure sometimes you get there and you go like, oh my God, why would they put that there? Like, why would they do, like, and you get ahead of that kind of stuff where you ensure maybe what the set pick is like or what the walls are going to be painted, like all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think that's the fun of the job is sort of how many variables there are and how many ways you can turn the dials and control the thing. I think there's a lot of cinematographers as they get older, and I've heard a lot of them say that they try to make things simpler and try to reduce some of those things to kind of keep things like really just sort of a clear trajectory. I think you can overwhelm yourself as a cinematographer, meaning an example would be how difficult you make it for yourself in the sense that you maybe shoot on lenses that are a real pain in the ass, but then you also have all these old lights that like break all the time, or you also enforce, I think a major managerial thing as a cinematographer that you have to be very aware of as your crews start to get bigger and everything is like, are you setting you and your crew up for success? Are you, some push it really far where I have crew friends of mine say like, oh, it was an 18-hour day and they were doing this and this and like shit hit the fan or whatever. And I think to myself, I'm like, well, why did that DP, kind of put themselves in a position where things were maybe impossible? Do you turn like I'm the type who I would turn to the director and the AD and the producer and sort of call out a little bit like, hey, there's a difference between this day being hard and the day being impossible. And do you speak up? Do you say something in a sense where you're like, I understand where we are in these things, but here's some solutions, some things I'm concerned about. Because you want to be ambitious and you want to push, right? That's important. But there is a line where it crosses over into a place where you have, one or two people on lighting and you have to do this huge night exterior or whatever. And it's your job as a professional to call that out and say, like, that's not going to happen in the allotted time that we said. And kind of not threatening, not like upsetting anybody, but just standing up in a way that's just sort of like, you've hired me to help guide us in these areas, and the resources that you have and the thing that you want to do not align. And how can we problem solve that? So that is sort of protecting yourself from the overwhelming thing where you're not sitting there, which I've been, again, I've gone through all the mistakes have led me to this point of sort of sitting there and going like, oh my God, like we're fucked, like
Mm-hmm.
you have to set yourself up in that way. I think that's a part of the job.
So it's a lot of problem solving, you say. And that's not something that people would think, right? Like that it's, then going back to limitations, I think, if you're able to do everything and anything, that is when it gets overwhelming. But once you start narrowing down those limitations, all those intersections of like limitations, like crew size, lights available, cameras available, is what the creativity is. Like that is when you're able to get creative.
Yeah, it's
Um,
all driven by that. And then, I mean, truly, it's always like, people talk about like, oh, it's all the script and all that and sort of the aesthetic we're going for. And of course, that's the objective and you're
yes.
going for it. But all of these, what I think is so cool about filmmaking is that all of those realities, those personalities, the circumstances of like what's happening on the day, what time of year it is, like all of those factors build into the reality of the thing when it gets filmed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's so cool about it. Obviously when you're on stage, you're in a controlled environment, your budget gets bigger, these things start to drop a little bit. But I've worked on stuff that the budgets have gotten bigger, nothing crazy. But I've got, have friends that are working on some of those, huge, I mean, some absolutely massive projects, some I can't say what, but like a friend was talking to me about something that's like huge, like the biggest thing in the fucking world,
Mm-hmm.
and was telling me this really stressful kind of like horror story thing. And we both laughed and we were like, it never ends. Like that's the point of the story. I can't tell you what it is, but it's
Okay.
like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
point was that it was like the point that I'm trying to make is that even on the biggest films in the world, like shit goes wrong.
Yes.
And it
Absolutely.
just reminder to yourself in a sense that it's like, okay, this is navigating that is a part of this journey. And when some people go like, oh, they have all the money in the world, like that's not part of it. It is. That is
Mm-hmm.
filmmaking. It is because you're doing it in the real world. So, there's variables, and but that influences the art of it.
My so I have a little bit of experience like on actual sets. I started ACing recently, and I just seeing like how the DP has to manage everyone. Like it started to make me
Yes.
think like, wow, this is such a bigger like managerial role than I thought because you have to be managing people. You know, you have gaffer, you have grips, you have ACs, you have everyone that's kind of like, you know, uh, doing what kind of doing your bidding in a way, but at the same time, you have to make sure that everything is checked off, everything's getting done because the director's looking to you for the call. Like, okay, is this ready? Like, are we good? And like, you got to
Yep.
be,
How
like,
long? How
yeah,
long? You got to have that timer. You got to have a really good timer in your brain.
exactly.
They really depend on you. Okay, you're going to flip the room. Well, that's gonna be 45 minutes, I'm big on like I'll tell you that stuff beforehand too. I'm not gonna surprise someone with time right there. You build a skill set of being able to see the day and being able to see 5, 7 setups ahead, sometimes a whole day ahead, um, and see the forest from the trees and understand, okay, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 45 minutes, and not to be, I hope none of that's intimidating in a sense, because this just takes years and time to like get to. And videography is such a more it's almost like more like a photographer where you're kind of like
Mm-hmm.
it's a much smaller group of
Run
people
and
because you
gun.
sometimes have, yeah, but you're a little more on your own, which is great though in terms of just like getting your hands on stuff and knowing where to stand and where to be and how to follow light and how to create imagery with less. And that foundation is like so incredibly important. But you do step into a world where you need to manage people, like you said, time management. How do you run things in a way that's sort of psychologically, or people, is morale good? Communication, like it's a whole thing, but it's really exciting because you're still doing all the creative, interesting stuff, but there's so much more to it than that I love. I think it's really cool.
So when working with, you have a lot of experience working with crews now. How do you have like certain people you want on your crews, and do you have a say in like who, you get to pick to, be in on your team, and like what do you value in, those members that are sort of working for you on set? Like what is most important?
That's a great question. Yes, vast majority of the time, most of the time, producers will say, do you have your crew? That's like a question that gets asked often, and usually that question is really because they kind of want to know if like they have to deal with helping you book people because it's more
Exactly.
work for them to do.
Yeah.
But and that becomes regional as well. Like I now have the sort of advantage in a way where I've shot all over the world. So, you can kind of say, let's say in an interview or something like that, like I've got crew there, and that's seen as an advantage because you've gone through the process of not only working with those people, but the whole interview. Like I'll go and interview, I parachute into a place, and land and start prep, and we'll start interviewing and looking for people. That's based on availability. That's based on recommendations from, I'll use Instagram and post a story
Yep.
asking, hey, has anybody shot here? And boom, you get 40 recommendations, from people. And then the current production team will do that as well. So, in New York, I'm from New York, started there, now in LA for 8 years. I've got crew in either city. And then again, those are kind of main hubs, if you will. And then in different, countries around, and states, cities around the world, especially United States. I've got some people in different areas. What I'm looking for, I mean, of course, experience and know-how and capability and whatever else, but I would say vibe and attitude matter a ton. And by that, I mean, I like a healthy mixture, and this is really hard to find, but someone who pushes back and will push and will really go for it. I don't really want like 110% yes people, but there's also a line in which I need people who are fucking down.
Mm-hmm.
Because filmmaking is really hard, and you come across some people who are either space cadets and too lackadaisical and kind of like out, just sort of a little aloof,
Yep.
and then you get some people who are incredibly strict. Now, with that said, you need to be safe conscious and you need to sort of be aware and like protect one another. That's a major part of filmmaking, but that can go too far in terms of people. Uh, Filmmaking, there's a chaos to it, and you
Yep.
need to have like a looseness and an awareness. So I want someone who really gives a shit. I really value giving a shit. Who are very passionate, but also take care of themselves and aren't an idiot. And who will push for the best thing and even push back against me, their boss, but also will know that if I shoot them that look, that's sort of like a not
Yeah.
now. They know to back off.
Yeah.
And by that, I don't even mean being a dick. It's just there are times where they have to understand, and the best I've worked with amazing crews that know this, that it's like, not, this is not the moment. Like we gotta go.
Exactly.
This actress is crying. The sun is setting. I agree. I see it. I want to move that like 3 feet over that way
Hmm.
too. But just like it's not happening. Let's move on
Exactly.
with our lives. You know what I mean? Like we have to do this thing now. So that is it's a combination of those things. It's rare. You can definitely find people who are one more than the other, but to get all of it, I've found them, and I've got people I've been working with for a long time who are very good friends too, which is really cool. We've grown together, which is exciting, and yeah, it's your crew is major.
So I guess, something important about finding crews, like what do you put out when you are putting out these crew calls, and what do you ask from them? Do you ask for like a reel, like their work? Like what are you trying to get? See, because it's just like a screen on a face and a screen. It's like, okay, I don't really know this person. Like, what do they have to show? Like, what are you trying to get to see if a person's worth it?
No, that's another great question. It depends. There's a few variables there. Like a Steadicam operator is a lot easier to sort of because like they can send you a reel and you can look at their
Yeah.
work. I've learned the hard way to go to really deep dive now. So yeah, I mean, sometimes what I get is like an Instagram page, right? And then you got to go from there. So of course, look, meeting with them in an interview can't be beat. That's number one. That tells you a lot. But I will, yeah, sure, look at their work, look at their IMDb, their resume, all that kind of stuff. I'll look at their IMDb or resume and then find other people that I either know, or sometimes cold call people and just ask them straight, like, is this person a dickhead? Are they cool? Like whatever, like just really get into it. And, and yeah, just kind of like do my homework, and find out, what that person's like, kind of, from other people to see if there's any red flags or anything. The one challenge that's very real that look, you don't know until you know. I've had people that have interviewed really well, meaning that we just like vibed really well, and had a good conversation, and then been on set and realized that it wasn't a good fit. I've had that happen.
How do you handle that?
Which uh, First, you talk to them and you pull them aside when it's appropriate. And you don't do it in front of anybody. You certainly don't like yell or embarrass anyone or anything along those lines. Yeah, you give them a conversation of, hey, I was expecting these things. We discussed this. This is what's happening. Let's change it. And then if they don't, I've fired two people before. It's not a good feeling. It's not a good experience. And it's only ever because they either weren't doing what was expected of them, or they weren't the right fit. That has happened in the sense that it's just like maybe the attitude didn't connect in a certain way, meaning that they may be good at said job, but the energy and what's happening is just not working.
Absolutely.
Um, so it's a part of it. It happens. But also like availability is really tough. So sometimes you do end up with people that maybe you don't love or
Yeah.
you're not like super psyched on, but it's just sort of the reality. And then you have to managerially deal with that and handle it and sort of bob and weave and sort of address it because you can't let that person go because you just have to deal, so that can happen.
Is that like sort of sternness that you've acquired, whether it's firing people or just kind of sitting people down and trying to figure out, what is this guy made of? Is that something you had to sort of acquire over the years? Because it's like, it's hard to flip the switch, and you have to be like kind of a tough guy, to some people if they're not doing their job. Is that something that you kind of had to learn?
Oh, definitely.
Hmm.
Definitely. Yeah, it's look, confrontation isn't an enjoyable experience for me. Some people, it's simpler for them. Some people even seek it out. I certainly don't. I want I work really hard to sort of avoid that in a way where it's like just hire the right people, my crews always tell me how like I'm extremely clear to them up front. Like they know exactly what they're getting themselves into. I kind of set everybody up for like, this is what this experience is going to be like. I pull no punches in that way, but no, but it also just comes with the job. And I think for me, the learning of all these things, again, earlier saying the sort of like calling out where it's something where you maybe say the uncomfortable thing that no one wants to admit, meaning like you're going through a schedule and everybody sort of knows deep down that like how fucked we are, but no one says it. And I'm the guy who will often be like, okay, so let's talk about the elephant in the room. Like this is not doable. So why don't we get together and come up with a new plan so that we can make it doable? That all comes from failure in the past, like having shit go wrong and being upset and then lying in bed at night and going like, man, what a bummer that that happened. How do I avoid that?
Yeah.
And then being like, right, okay, I just have to communicate. I don't have to be, it doesn't have to be hostile. It doesn't be a big deal. And again, realizing that I was like, right, they've hired me. I'm the professional expert in this particular field. And part of cinematography is these logistics and time management things. So it's my responsibility to explain that to them. If they don't want to hear it, that's a whole different conversation. They say, shut the fuck up and just do your job.
Yeah.
Like, fine, okay, cool. Like that, which has never happened. Usually, honestly, all the time, people are happy to discuss it. And crew members too, if you say to them, hey, this is a problem, always too, oh, oh shit, okay, I understand, I hear you. Okay, you know what I mean? Like everybody wants to do well, you know what I mean? So it's
Yes.
like it kind of, unless you come across someone who has a really bad attitude problem, or maybe is going through something in their life and they're an alcoholic, or like, not to be too dark, but like shit, you come across
Yes.
people with problems and stuff like that. That's a different story. But if you're with professionals and you're with people who want to do well, communicating and being upfront about things is fine. Also, being a New Yorker too, though, it's like, I talk fast, I'm
Yeah.
straight, I
Yeah.
like, do the thing. And that's funny too, going around in different places and sort of people, you know, getting a kick out of that a little bit. I will say in LA, I actually think we have a big advantage in California because everybody's
Yeah.
a little like lackadaisical and like, oh, cool, man. And like we roll up and we're like, this is what we're going to do. And they're like, oh, shit. Like,
It's funny, even like going from New York's, even going into the city for some jobs. Like I work the junket shoots occasionally
yeah,
for the films. I'll get like, "Oh, you're from Long Island." Like they're like, "No," like just
yeah,
because I
yeah,
guess
yeah,
like the
yeah.
way I talk or the accent or whatever. But
Yep.
it,
Yeah.
it it always gets brought with me. So
Yeah.
I got to use it
Yeah.
to my
You
strengths.
gotta, as I say, just own who you are. That's the thing.
Absolutely. So, you've said as a DP, understanding editing is very important, and that kind of was interesting. Why do you think editing is so important to understand as a DP?
Yeah, extremely important. I highly recommend anyone who is interested in the field of cinematography to edit a
Hmm.
bit when you're younger. I think as you get older, you don't necessarily really need to
Yeah.
mess with it too much. But I mean, as a foundation, you should understand the concept of it. And the reason is because on set, we're essentially like mining the materials for them. Like
Yeah.
we go out to the field and we like pick the things and
Hmm.
then we like hand it to them. We're like, here's your stuff, make the meal.
Yeah.
And so if we don't get them the right resources, then like what are you doing? So if you're super in the moment and you're just like, this is a cool shot, I like this shot, and you haven't thought at all about the whole apparatus, simple things like I think some of the simplest ways to think about it of sort of transitions and how to things structurally move around, and then of course like the 180 line, and you get into scenes where people are talking in different parts of the room. Like people like talking about someone did this deep dive on Top Gun Maverick where he comes into the bar and he meets Jennifer Connelly's
Yep.
character and then looks over, sees all the kids all roll up, they all start talking, then they come over and they interact with him, and then the son, Goose's son walks in and blah blah blah. Like you
Yep.
watch that whole sequence and just think about the camera placement, the eye lines. It's like that scene is sort of
Hmm.
it's a sequence, not a scene. It's very long. It's actually I rewatched it recently. It's like 20 minutes.
Same.
It's extremely complicated. It's simple coverage in terms of like there's no super inventive shots, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's like they're very they have a purpose. You know,
Yes.
they're very, it's about geography. It's about people watching each other. I'm at the bar, I'm watching you, I could see this, but then we move over and now we're in their conversation. Then we come back. Then he goes outside and then he's watching, looking in.
Hmm.
And it's like to be someone, if you're a cinematographer and you're setting all of that up, and also the sun's, it's like literally
Yeah,
like
yeah.
shifting to dusk. It's like it's very complicated, but looks easy and smooth because it's very well done. But that anywhere from planning to structuring that to in the moment lining up and setting that eye line and script supervisor coming over and saying, I think it should be a little over this way and da 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 da. And then like physically interacting with like something that happens on set all the time is you're setting up the camera and you're setting up the lights, but then like you'll often you can get in the way of
Yeah.
the actors, meaning it's the physical interaction with people and seeing things and how aware you are of that. So anyway, it's just it's the point is that you are literally you're the person who is executing that material, and editing is how it pieces together. And for you to sit there and shoot something, sit at the computer and do it, the aha light bulb moments, I promise you, will come fast, where you'll
Mhm.
have moments of sort of like, nailed that. Or honestly, a lot of educational moments of like, well, that didn't fucking work. Why didn't that work? You
Yeah.
know, and then it'll click for you. So I think it's really important when you're starting the first handful of years to just shoot shit. And that's why I sometimes say to people, I'm like, just grab your fucking iPhone and like shoot a dialogue scene. I'm talking, this is for people who don't know
Yeah, yeah.
anything. And they're going to quickly figure out the 180. They're going to quickly figure out consistency and eye lines and all sorts of stuff where they just have those realizations, you know?
I think, it's interesting because whenever I make, short films, I'm always watching the edit as I'm making it, and like, how is this going to piece together? How is this shot going to piece together with the other one or the previous one? And I think when you start to think of like you're watching the movie as you're shooting it, and like thinking about all these elements, the product is so much better. And you get to the desk, and you're like, whew, I'm so glad I, was actually thinking and looking out for myself. This is if you're doing everything yourself, but it still applies.
It does
Uh,
apply. It
yeah,
does apply. It really does. And you need to consider it because again, I think if you're in your own head and you're just worried about the moment and not sort of the holistic process, it's yeah, it
yeah,
just
it's just rough.
I think it's really important, you know, that you consider it, and it's just a great form of education, you know,
Yeah.
in terms of having those realizations, because it's one thing in the moment. You know, we've all had days where you finish a project at the end of the day and you're like, man, we crushed that. That was awesome. And then you watch the edit and you're like, oh, that sucked, you know? And
Yeah.
it's sort of like having that. I think having, as a buddy of mine once said, which I love this, he says, you have to suffer the footage. You have to go through the footage and be like, you know, like I
Yes.
think that
Yes.
that's a part of it. You know, especially when you're starting.
Again, making the mistakes, realizing it, and then learning from them. I love that. And that this little side note, this whole like idea of an assembly line in a film is so new to me, coming from like freelance videography. I remember one DP, he just said one simple phrase. He's like, "I don't like editing." Well, I'm like, wait. So like, what do you mean you don't edit? She's like, cinematographers just do that thing, and then it's passed on to someone who just does that thing, and then it's just passed on to someone, and it's so interesting and intricate. And I realized like those bigger projects need that because there's so many parts involved. It's like a giant machine assembly line. Like all these big
Yeah.
movies, anything you shoot, it has to be done by specialists. Everyone at every step has to be a specialist. And that's something that's so interesting to me, because I'm opening myself up to the film world now and seeing all these different parts, the time management of a DP and what the director's in charge of and what the editors. It's so vast and so interesting.
It is. It is.
So, what would you say is, I guess, like the percent split of using your creativity versus like logistical time management or just problem solving on set as a DP? Like, what do you find yourself doing more most of the time?
I think I mean, just even the way I've been talking and just the way I look at things, I think I do most of it is sort of like the logistics sort of
Yeah, I would.
based
Yeah,
thing. You know, that's how my brain works, but it's simply because I think that the creativity part is something it's like almost done in silence a little bit more, I think
Mm,
is what I mean. And it's sort of what I do when I'm like alone. I get home at night from prep or whatever, and I'm like looking through things and um, going through stuff and the more intimate conversations that happen with the director or whatever. But the most of the day and majority of the time spent on set because it is so time conscious. Um, I think if you watched me work, it would come off as extremely managerial, a ton of delegating, and a ton of logistics and communication. However, what's fascinating about it is that it's all in service of that creative. But I'm not sitting there going like, the whole time because you'd be
yeah.
fired. Like that's
Yeah.
not how
Yeah.
it works. You have to execute. And maybe some sets are like that. I haven't worked on them. To me, I've never experienced something that wasn't um, because again, it comes back to the problem solving too. Usually, when there's a problem, meaning you have a good approach, but there's a challenge, it then reverts to problem solving. It can be very creative problem solving. I've noticed, again, as my years have increased, I've been able to problem solve really fast or get ahead of things by having a plan that will have less problems. Again, setting myself up for success in a way where you sort of what's really cool is you start to be able to see them before they can happen. So
Yeah.
someone can be telling you something and you're just sort of like, right, done that. Don't do this, that'll work. And that just again is that time. So that's really cool. But yeah, the creative is I think it's a lot of sort of the design that you're doing in the background. And then on the day, what's really cool that I love as well, I think when things get really creative is that little stuff that adds up at the end of the day, meaning you're doing all the execution shit, and then it's those little tweaks that
Yeah.
last 5-10%, as they say, that I think makes things pretty special. And that can happen where you're sort of sitting there, and let's say I've delegated to 5 different people, and it's going to take them 10-15 minutes. Something that's challenging is not like getting in their way and like
Yes.
letting the gaffer do the thing and not going over and trying to like I've panicked plenty. If any of my guys that work with me watch this, they would know that you get a little panicky and you want to get in there and like
Mhm.
do things, and they're just like, get the fuck out of the way, you're gonna break it. And knowing to like back off, but to sit there in those moments, you'll have a second, and that can be a really valuable time to sort of sit, analyze, and then have a little light bulb moment that again has to be okay though, because you can't necessarily turn to somebody and go like, I have an idea, it's going to take a full hour, like that
Yeah.
would they would kill you. But there are times where you can turn to somebody and say like, hey, actually this is going to take me another 15 minutes. I know I said I was going to be done in 5, but here's my pitch. It's going to do this. um Sometimes they'll be, oh, that's fucking brilliant, I love it, do it, you know
But
what I
you
mean?
have to
So like
show them
those are
like
creative.
you have to show them like you just said, you just pitch it to them. You have to like
Yeah.
tell them this is going to benefit this by
Yes.
XYZ. You can't just be like, I want to do this. I want to do this. No, you just have to be like,
No,
what
no,
is
no,
the
no, no.
result
Yeah.
of that? You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
how will it
exactly.
benefit the project in a sense?
Right. Yeah. So those can be little light bulb exciting moments. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I hope that answers your
Yeah,
question. It's tough. I think the creative part is
it's a lot
I
on
don't know if
the
I downplay
pre-production,
it,
right?
I'm not sure. Yeah, a ton in the pre-production. No, that's where it all where kind of all is but then what's cool is, I mean, you're in the moment and you kind of you see things or things
Yes.
surprise you or whatever. That happens all the time. But which I think is an interesting balance. Like when I was younger, I think I came out of school thinking that film was like really rigid, like you just did storyboards and you executed.
Hmm.
And when I lost that control, I'd get really frustrated. I'd be really annoyed that things didn't go as planned. And then I learned to realize that I was like, oh, right, no, this is the whole thing, is that you do plan, you get most of it, and then shit happens and like you got to play jazz. Like you just got to be fucking ready for the thing that comes your way.
A lot of the little like shorts I've done, even on like the scale that I'm doing them on, there's always things like I made a shot list of a recent automotive short that I just released, and it was down to a T. I knew what I wanted to do. I had everything drawn out, hand drawn, everything from the action, the shots, Literally everything was covered. It was like on the back of my hand, like practically. But there's always things. That's what I learned from that short. Was there's always things that were a little bit different in reality. You know, whether it was, oh, this garage scene, the lift that I want the car on isn't exactly where I can stage the subject, so I have to like move the camera here instead. Or like even in the moment, I'll like, oh, that's a cool reflection off like the mirror capturing the driver. Like, let's do that. There's always like I always like to leave a little room to
Yes.
for like shots to just come up, like maybe like 5 to 6 just creative shots that come out of nowhere. I'm like, wow, oh, that's actually pretty cool. I would have never thought of that because I'm here in my desk just writing out what I want to do and what I think would be. And then when you get there on location, obviously you do scouting, but you get there on location and you're like, oh crap! Like in the moment, you have a like a spark, everything aligns, and you're like, okay, let's do that instead. So I think
Thousand
it's
percent.
that's where the
That's the game.
creativity. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, the game is you're being creative when you're doing that storyboard thing and you're feeling things out. But then when you get there in the moment, you don't even necessarily need to look at that thing because you already
exactly.
did that process. You already poured that out. You already played. You already messed around. It influences. You get there, a new version happens, a new version happens in editing. They say like editing's like the final draft in a way, but it's like even on set, there's a new draft and the actors changing
Mm-hmm.
lines, blocking, changing, shots changing, whatever it is. So it's cool. It's just it's constantly sort of upgrading in that way. So yeah, you do have to have a plan because again, as projects get bigger too, they want it. It's an insurance thing. Everybody wants to understand sort of, if it's a specialty equipment that you need, increase and, say, hey, I need some extra crew for this day because we're doing this whole thing, or, this is how many hours is going to take, whatever. But at the same time, shit changes, which I will say that's a challenge as a cinematographer too, as things get bigger, is that production people and other departments in general kind of want to know exactly what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is, filmmaking doesn't work that way. And that's something that I find very difficult to find. Also, with the crew thing as well, you asked about earlier, is finding other people amongst the group, and the group gets bigger, that understand that things change. That's tough because a lot of the time people are working based off that information. So they can succeed, they can do their job better. They know it's going to be like this. And you have to be responsible because you don't want to completely fuck them over. I've heard stories
Absolutely.
of like, diva DPs who pull shit where they're like, well, fuck you, I don't give a shit. We're going to do this whole thing. And you just screwed a whole department over. You just did a whole, like, you blew things up. Like, things just get really dramatic. But I think within reason, but still, it's still an attitude adjustment of understanding that a part of this process is one that is organic and then it shifts. And I find the people that I click with the most, I kind of dub them like filmmakers,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that I worked on a project once with like the locations guy. I was like, this dude's a fucking filmmaker, meaning that he was constantly looking out for what was best for the film, for the group, for everybody. He was thinking creatively. And that was really, really, really cool. And I identify them on different shoots, whereas some people who are just like, dude, I'm over it. Just tell me what to do. Like, I don't care.
So
You
let's
changed the thing. I'm
define.
so mad at you. You know what I mean? Like that
Let's
kind of shit.
let's define. What is your definition of like a filmmaker? What is it? If you could put it.
Yeah, yeah. Is somebody who thinks about the process in a holistic way and in a way that isn't just about their simple task or their department. They're not they're not just focused on the prop or just focused on the thing. They're there as a part of the group for the greater good, like for the objective of making a good movie. Very fine line between all these things because there's some people who speak out of turn, who get involved in things
Yep.
and get complicated. And then there are other people on the other side who just focus on that one thing and don't give a shit. Honestly, on the bigger stuff and union and getting the bigger, there does become, that's not my department mentality, which is truth to that. You don't want to get in trouble. You don't want to get like, this is a real slippery slope. There's some people who'd be listening to this who'd be like, that's bad advice. Like, just fucking keep your head down, do your job. I don't agree with that. I think that the best people are the ones that sort of appropriately go above and beyond and think like a filmmaker. And by that, I mean, outside of their lane a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But again, fine line, very, very, very fine
Always
line.
having that forward vision though of like, okay, the overarching project, how is this serving it? What other variables are present? I think to your point about stick to my department, one analogy some DP told me was that, you know, he basically said like someone recommended to apparently like batteries. I don't know what batteries they were talking about, but they charge faster from 0 to 70 than from 70 to 100. And he was like he was going to make that recommendation to someone on set, but he's like, if I make this recommendation, then it's my fault if like the camera dies or something, because like, oh, he told me that not to charge that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
then it
yeah,
gets
yeah.
pretentious. Do you think there's like a line?
Of course there is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah,
no, no, totally. That's a great example of the challenge of, are you putting yourself personally at risk? Do
yeah.
you even want to set yourself? I mean, we all constantly navigate those things. So that's why I'm saying it's like this is a super
Hmm.
difficult thing, but you can identify them when there are people who, because it's just timing, really, a lot of
Yes.
the time, and communication, meaning, the shithead in the middle of a blocking thing like shouts something out, and you're like, why did you,
Yeah.
like, shut the fuck
Yeah.
up? Versus the person who has that right timing, goes to the right person and says to them off to the side, hey, blah 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 blah, like that guy going up maybe to the first AC and saying like, hey, I know this thing about these batteries, I have not personally used them, I don't know if they'll break or whatever, but that's
At
something
your
that I've heard,
discretion.
at your discretion, up to you. Now that person could still, the thing could blow up and they could point a finger, and so you have to sort of decide for yourself. And I've had times I've absolutely learned when to, bite my tongue and
Yep.
say like, not now, just let that one. I say to a lot to my crew, well, I either say count to five, or like someone's making a big decision, I'll sort of walk up to them and be like, kind of like, everybody freeze, no one do anything, count to five, like, don't, just sit
Hmm.
tight. This is above us right now. Like, everybody just
Yep.
take a moment, drink some water. You have to navigate that picking your, you said earlier, like picking your battles.
Hmm. So, film editing, when it comes down to the actual like look of a film, I guess that's where I'm trying to go to the coloring, the look, and the cinematography. Everyone, I guess, it's been blown up on social media nowadays, and maybe that's the gap between our generational, but like, there's always on Instagram you see these like overdone halation and like grain and sort of like very saturated
Yeah.
colors, like that film look, and everyone's like, like the classic like, bring an FX3 to a carnival video, and it's like, like you see those all the time, right?
Yeah, yeah,
With the
yeah.
bright colors and stuff, and like, sure, like it looks great, right? It looks cool,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, sure, it's
yeah, it's
cool.
impressive for the
Um,
price, for sure.
but like, where do you see like where do you think people should really be valuing, learning in terms of crafting an actual look and not just like going about the trends of the grain and the overdone halation? Like, what actually dictates a film's look?
Yeah, another great question. Yeah, I mean, I would say I think it's a phase everybody goes through that is
Yep.
good and fine to like do the like, want it to look like film, all that kind of stuff. It's still, I mean, it lingers for me in all sorts of ways. There's a lot about it I like, and I navigate that all the time in terms of, and I have great debates with, honestly, like really high end, wonderful colorists, some who do film projects all the time, and digital ones, and they're getting people. They're to me the most fascinating to talk to about this stuff, because they get people constantly. They work on all different types of projects, and they see all the different trends. They see all the different techniques, a lot of which in the past few years have gotten pretty incredible in terms of these emulation tools and whatever. They've really kind of skyrocketed in the past like 3 to 5 years. But a film's look, I mean, what an amalgamation of things. It's such a, but broadly speaking, in terms of, obviously, I think like, contrast and saturation are two major things, and not even including necessarily in color, but like your lighting ratio, like everything,
Yep.
just like your general contrast, your general not only level of how vibrant your color may or may not be, but also your mixture of color. Is it a more, sort of monochromatic film? Is it a more of a split tone type, mixed color type film? Is it and then on like the texture front of, is it, and that includes lenses, grain, halation, filtration, everything, levels of haze, like all that kind of stuff. How gritty and dirty are your sets and your props and your makeup and your costumes, which side note, I'm so triggered by how much things on TV and wherever else, like everything just like looks brand new. It drives me
Mm,
crazy. I'm like, I don't know why this very large budget franchise thing, like everybody looks like they like just got like their dry cleaning done. And like,
yes.
I'm just like the props all look like they were
Needs
brand
some
new.
grit.
Yeah, it really drives me crazy. But everybody, what's fascinating about film too is that everybody has like their pet peeves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But but yeah, I think my suggestion to people would just be to keep trying new things and don't get stuck in sort of a specific, if you go down that road where you buy a LUT pack and some halation tools and grain and you put your soft filter on the front of your lens, like go down that road, have fun, do your thing. Like no hate on it, like it's all good, but then just like don't do it for too long.
it's
Change it up.
it's it's a lot of the little things, right? It's a lot of okay, contrast ratio. Okay, where's the even like the camera positioning, the light position. Like it's like so many of the little things that like oh that's like tiny. Why would that matter? It's not like the big overarching thing. It's like no, you take five of those little things, 10 of those little things, combine all of them. That is when you're like,
1000%.
holy crap, that looks really great. And a lot of people they'll see something like, I can't put my finger on why this frame looks so great, but it does. And it's because all of that work into all those little things finally accumulating into the image you're seeing. So I
A
think,
1000%. It all adds up. And I think too that if you really want to be taken seriously as a cinematographer, my recommendation would be to, I mean, again, do all that stuff that we're
yes,
talking about, but that becomes quickly actually very little of the process in the sense that it's sort of that camera position in relationship to that blocking within that location with the time of day and how you design the lighting, again, not just for that one shot that like looks really good, but what about the rest of the scene and the coverage, and what if we spend all that time in that house, and how does it look in this part of the story and the arc of sort of when you place that look here versus there and the design of the whole thing. That's when you start leveling into that higher end that isn't just, oh, my LUT's good, my lens is good, I'm good. It starts to go way beyond that. But again, you got to start somewhere. It's all good. Those things matter incredibly too. It's just that I think a lot of videographer, YouTube, younger people, like all that sort of
yes,
that thing that's happening, can a lot of the videos and the focus can be on those tools because they're tangible and they're things that you can get. Like, oh, you have an FX3. Well, I can sell this to you and you can do these steps and boom, your footage looks great. I totally understand why. But again, if you're someone who's listening or watching and wants to sort of upgrade, you got to have fun with that. But then there's a whole other world above
it,
it.
it's like that phrase like lighting places, not faces, or spaces, not
Yeah, yeah,
faces.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, sure, camera lens, cool. Okay, that looks great. Like you look great. But like, no, what if we want to move the camera around this area like all the time? Like, how are we going to light it? How are we going to make sure every shot like really looks good? And then you look back at the scene, you're like, wow, that looks incredible. It looks like an actual look, in a sense, not just a basic sort of film. So I think it's really the accumulation of the little things. So
Yes, they all add up.
taking jobs to sort of like pay the bills necessarily, like what I'm trying to say by that is like taking jobs that you're not too passionate about and you're just kind of like paying the bills and then not you're not really in full artistry. Oh my god, I'm like obsessed with this mode. What what's the balance look like with those like taking jobs you want versus you don't really want, and like how do you stay motivated throughout the whole way through?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's a reality of making a living in this industry and being a working cinematographer. I think that there are obviously some household names that I would imagine don't have this problem and are just crushing it. I think some names probably come to mind for all of us, but for pretty much all of us, yes, there are times where you have passion projects and you have ones that you just sort of I mean, sometimes the commercials are really cool and there are work that you want to share and they are really neat. I find most of the time the creative people involved in them are very conservative and very sort of fearful. So that
Yeah.
for it, I like to use the word dilutes. It just gets diluted really quick. We also live in a world now too where the assets are so they want it's everything. So the resources sort of get really diminished, and sort of again coming up with that sort of that concept of the like super high end broadcasts, like the Super Bowl ad with like all the money, and now it's sort of it's the social thing and it's the YouTube and blah, 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 like so it kind of just gets spread really thin. With that said, I kind of have a little bit of a saying that played out over time, which is that like I save it for the features or I save it for the narrative work,
Mm.
meaning that my like extreme passion and my workaholic mentality, it's like the commercial work I create some boundaries and I don't get to like I'm not going to hurt my personal life for that. Whereas the narrative feature stuff, I'm like all the way in. And again, because I'm very lucky that my wife is a filmmaker, she understands that in the sense that like when she goes and she directs movies, same thing. Like we're both really good about like, she went and did a movie in London the end of last, so we're coming close to a year ago. And I dropped her off at the airport and I was like, go with God, like go do your thing. You don't need to fucking call me whenever. Of course she did. We talk all the time. But my point being is I support in that sense that I'm like,
Yep.
you're going to go for 8 weeks and you go make a movie, do whatever you have to do to go make that movie. This is it. Commercials, it's a little bit more of a clocking in 9 to 5. And that's because, I, I used to kill myself for everything. And as I got older, I sort of needed to balance that a little bit more. With that said, I mean, with the commercials and stuff, you can definitely, with certain filmmakers, you can do some cool shit. And I like to use commercials also sometimes as like a way to experiment a little bit. And this is within a very fine line because, you have to do the
Yes.
job and get the shots. But also sometimes like half the time, actually 90% of the time, they have no idea what lenses you're shooting on. No one really even like talks about it and stuff. So I'll just like try new shit, I
So
try
with
new
those,
lights,
with the
you get to like
commercials,
try new tools.
with the commercial shoots, who is basically like you're saying they don't really know what lenses you're using. Like, is there a client there and that is kind of like talking through with the director and they're kind of just like, oh, that looks good, cool, all right.
Pretty much, and the directors look. Some of the commercial directors are they're just. I mean, they're narrative filmmakers too. You know what I mean? And they do know, and it's sort of it gets storyboarded, and we're kind of just like really executing. And the bigger budget ones, you do get like really fun toys and all that. But there's plenty where you talk with the director, and it's like the first time I've worked with them, and I'm like, "How you feeling about lenses?" And they're like, "I don't know lenses at all. I just want something pretty." And you're like, "Okay." You're like,
Hmm.
I haven't used those before. Let me throw those on. And everybody likes them because they're just like pretty nice vintage lenses or something like that. But I get to kind of in the background be like, okay, cool. I've tried those now. I see what they're like. I'm going to bank it for a potential project in the
Gotcha.
future. Same thing with the tools and the toys and the lighting. And there's a new light that just came out. I can turn to the gaffer and say like, we should try that one out. Maybe like, okay, cool. Yeah, let's bring it on. Now it's the right tool. Like we're not going to, again, do anything
Yeah.
inappropriate, but we get to play a little bit in a way that they don't notice,
Mm,
which is cool
I
and
love that.
fun. And then you just bank it for because what matters to me the most is the movies, and I get to kind of bank it for that for future potential project.
I love that. It's like they don't really know that you're experimenting too much, but you kind of know it's in that margin of like this will work either way. Like I'll make this work for the client, but like I just want to see can it go a little further and like can I get that look, and then you learn for the next project. I love that, and I do the same thing on obviously a smaller scale, but I try to change things up and see, oh, let's try this light for the podcast or this
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
technique.
Just keep experimenting and expanding that because then as challenges or situations come your way, you can go like, "Oh, I know, I've
Hmm.
done this here. This will apply. That's the solution."
So, when advertisers when they like allow a creative risk, we're saying like some of them don't, some of them do, but when they do, like if using like anamorphic lenses or like dynamic lighting, like how I guess how much of a role do you have in like the actual I guess active story? Like they're there to make it look pretty. They're there to make it look good. If they want it to look good, they want it to look good, and you're using these tools. But how much do you have a role in the actual storytelling of the commercial? Is it just kind of strict shot lists and that's kind of what we have to follow? Or can you like be like, hey, what if we did this? This will like emphasize the product more. Is there ever moments like that?
Yeah, there are. I would say most commercials come to you having been Most of the time they're honestly pretty storyboarded, and they'll even have like
Hmm.
animatics and that type of stuff. They often, because you have to keep in mind that the creative director, the client, the even the salesperson before all that, um, they'll often put together kind of a thing even sometimes before the director in a sense where there sort of are as an advertising agency sort of designing a thing for like this is what we want to do, and they kind of come to us to execute a little bit more. So I often on commercials it comes to me and it's like pretty well laid out. I would say it's a bit more of an execution job, which I think also maybe makes it a little less interesting for me. With that said, they want you to come in, not all the time. Sometimes they're like literally like just do this.
Hmm.
But there are plenty of times where in your first meeting with them, they're sort of like, show me what you got, like you got anything. And then on the day as well, if there is room, um, they want you to sort of like upgrade. Like I think they do hire you in a way to execute the thing, but then also punch above. I will say too, though, that commercials are very careful in that they try to get all the options and everything because when they go to editing, there's going to be all sorts of notes. Commercials
Mm.
have a lot of cooks. That's the thing. That's the difference. Movies, narrative, I should say, this kind of not all the time. I mean, TV as showrunner and blah blah blah. But being kind of black and white about it, it's like usually like director's king. That's it.
Yeah.
Um, Commercial, you're going to have a lot of cooks. So you can throw ideas around, but the tough part is that a lot of the time they want a lot of versions of the actors. They want a lot of versions of how you do certain setups so that basically no one wants to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Like that's really what it is that they don't want, Frank wasn't there on the shoot and then Frank sees it on Monday and Frank's like, why didn't you get that shot? And they're like, oh shit, Frank's mad at us. You know what I mean? Like that's usually they're trying to protect themselves for that. So there's room, but it depends. And I would say it's more of an execution job most of the time with commercials. But yeah, I mean, you get to play with toys and all sorts of cool shit like this. Car commercials. You get the arm cars and
Yeah.
drones and stuff, and like it's a good day at
That's
work.
that
You know?
stuff is awesome. That's what I want to get into next, the car commercials, and I'm so interested
Yeah,
because I started the first time I ever picked up a APS-C camera. It was a Canon M50 little guy, and I would
yeah.
always go to the car meets and car shows around Long Island. We have some pretty good ones here. They're like Glen
Yeah.
Cove.
Hmm.
There's always car stuff going on
Oh
the
yeah.
island, so it was always fun to do that, and I still do occasionally. But I wanted to ask you, how did you get into car commercials? Like, because that's a kind of a specialized area. Did you
Yeah.
have a lot of car portfolio work that kind of led you to that spot?
I think I was pretty lucky. So I mentioned earlier how I'm in film school. I started to connect with a lot of like NYU kids, and just like be on their film sets, like DP stuff or GAF stuff or operate or whatever it may be. Just through a connection through somebody, I just like ended up on some of their sets, clicked with people, and I mentioned that because then one of the NYU students became a producer at Vox Media at the
Mm,
time. And Vox Media, this is sort of like YouTube's really exploding and starting to become a viable commercial thing. 'Cause it was just like people just dumped shit on there, and it started to become this like, oh, actually, we can monetize and people can make money off of this. And Vox Media comes along and it like starts basically this whole branded content thing where people are doing these sort of like doc based advertising pieces that were like 2 to 3 minutes long. I shot a ton of those in my 20s. That was like a big start to my commercial slash just freelance professional cinematography career. Purely a timing thing. It was like an era, if you
mm.
will. I mean, people are still doing it, but it was like a big thing at the time. So this is talking like it kind of really blew up around like again, I graduated film school 2009. So 2011 is kind of when this was like really exploding. And so that one NYU guy worked there, and him and I just worked a bunch, and he liked me and just was like, "You're a car guy." Like I was a car
Oh,
guy.
you are? Okay, nice.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Sorry, I didn't mention that. My brother, literally like he works for Porsche and he
Oh,
races. He
shoot.
just did a McLaren race a little while ago. We go karting, like higher end like shifter carts and that kind of stuff. So we're kind of all my dad's all into cars and all that
What is
stuff.
his name,
So
if you don't mind shouting him out? I'd like to look him up
yeah,
if he
my
races.
brother's Andrew Chinnici is his name. He won a
Nice.
race with McLaren in like a little McLaren GT class
Nice.
like 3 months ago, I think it was. Yeah, it's very 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 cool. I will say, side note too, that probably the coolest day on set I've ever had was that my wife. She basically got hired to do a car commercial, and again, we say we don't work together, but we basically she directed. She had never done a car commercial before. I was the DP and my brother was the stunt driver. And so I had a day on set where my wife
Wow.
was directing. I was like, doing wheels in the back of a Porsche Cayenne with the arm car, and my brother was in the other car driving. We're like walkie-talkie, and I was like, "Fucking
The whole
pinch me!"
family's
Like,
getting to work.
what? I was like, "This is the coolest. This is the coolest day of my life." But anyway, sorry. What I'm saying is that this guy worked at Vox Media. They started doing this branded content stuff. It wasn't high-end broadcast commercials. They were just like car shots of cars interspersed with these like branded content doc pieces. So he just hired me and I just went and shot a lot of car stuff with him. The first one we ever did, we were, you know, minivan with the full sliding door
Yep,
open with a
yep.
tripod filming out the side. You know what I mean? Like, and that commercial turned out, it's like I can't even tell you. People think the budget is like 5 times what the budget was of that. Um, and that got me into a position where I shot a handful of those. And then they actually got some higher end stuff, like more actual broadcast commercials, because I had that material and no one asked any questions. It just sort of brought me along, and we eventually moved our way up to doing arm car stuff and kind of more high end stuff, but it kind of worked its way up from there.
So talking about like opening the van door and shooting out the window. I used to, I still do. I shoot out the back of my Forerunner because it's got the lowering window in the back. So
Hmm.
I'll like hang
Yeah,
out and take some pic. I'll be like harnessed in because
yeah.
apparently it's illegal to do that on Long Island. Like you can't be you
Oh,
have to be
okay.
in a seat, and like
Mm,
even being harnessed is apparently it's like you're not
okay.
allowed. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I used to do that all the time. Even with the videos, I'd hang like the tilter ring out the back window
Hmm.
and give them directions. Now I have this. I don't know if you know the brand Mauve Max. They have like those arms
Hmm.
that
Yep.
sort of go.
Yep.
Yeah. So now I have like this suction kit on the back of my Forerunner. Whenever I have to do I do like these car features where it's like a 2 to 3 minute like YouTube video where
Yeah, yeah.
showcasing all the cars, make a little story out of it. But yeah, the car technology is fun, and I think you have to be a car guy to do those jobs, like or else you become one. It's either one of those things.
Sure. No, you have to love them. I mean, I love cars, so I kind of those jobs are great.
Yeah.
They're again, I've got another one coming up that I'm excited for because it's been a minute. But yeah, they're it's kind of funny. I sometimes say too that, like, I mean, I love actors. I have a lot of actor friends, and narrative is where my heart is. But it's sometimes nice to just work with like an inanimate object all
Yes.
day long. Like,
Yeah.
it's just there and it's just pretty and it does exactly what you want it to, and like, that's nice.
Doesn't get
And
tired.
yeah, it doesn't. It just sort of it's there and it does its thing. And yeah, car commercials are really fun, and there's some really cool ones out there. I don't know that I've ever shot. I will say that like I have a desire, I think, to do some more daring ones. Like the ones I've done are a little pretty straightforward, kind of
Hmm.
paint by numbers. And then there's a few guys like Tim Sessler is a DP. He did this Viper spot a few years ago that I think is like
Yes,
the
I know
the
what you're
best
talking.
the best car thing. And my brother and I are like obsessed. We watch it all the time. We're obsessed
Hmm.
with it. And he's a I wouldn't he's him and I are friendly. Like we chat occasionally, and it's always like anytime I talk with him, I'm like, dude, that fucking Viper spot, like just the shake and like I just like
Yes.
I love
I'm
the
like, how do
sound
you? It's
design.
so
Yeah,
hard
yeah.
to reproduce that shake. It's so different. It looks
Yeah,
so different.
he's got a Tim's work is really cool. I really like his work always. I remember the first time I saw his stuff a long time ago, and I was just like, "Oh, this guy's doing something really neat. He's very creative." And he's definitely slipped into a zone. I certainly don't have this, but like commercial wise, he is doing bold stuff. People go to him specifically to do bold, cool stuff. But I think he's a good example of like he just like shot his own shit and put it on YouTube, and or
Hmm.
sorry, more specifically Vimeo, and it blew up and then people, eventually clients came to him. Again, I don't know Tim that well, so I don't want to speak for his story, but that's what I noticed from afar, was that it was just sort of like he would post these really cool, inventive, cool videos that I was pretty darn sure he just like went off and did himself. And then which I will say though, that was at a time where there was a lot less of that. So I think you could stand out more. There's a
Yes.
lot of noise now. Like
Yep.
to cut through that noise is incredibly difficult. But and then that Viper spot was really cool to kind of see like, okay, this is with an actual client. This is like a full on thing that's paid for or whatever else. But he was able to bring that boldness. I love that shit. It's so cool.
That
I haven't had the
thing
chance to do that, you know?
that thing must have been insanely like cool to shoot, and just like the way they laid out everything. Like the roads were clear in the shot. Obviously there's
Oh,
probably like
it
some
was a big,
CG, but
that was a big budget. There's a bunch of phantom shit in there. It's like that was that was a big budget. I'm sure they were impressive with what they had because those guys are good at what they do. But that's pricey.
we do car stuff all the time here. We're Black Sail Productions. I don't know if you I'd said that before, but we're in Locust Valley, New York. We do a lot of shoots here, but also like all across the country, and we do a lot of car content. We're actually going up to Vermont to shoot a. It's called Wolfscar. It's like a car festival. We do it every year, but yeah, we're always shooting cars. And funny enough, I'm sure you've seen F1, the movie.
I
Yeah.
haven't missed a single F1 race since the 2000
Okay. Great.
season.
Good.
I
Good.
am a very big fan of Formula One.
Good, great.
Yeah.
So you know that shot in the film where it's like a whip pan going, it's like
Mhm.
locked onto the car. He already like Sam, the guy who owns the spot. He already reproduced it. I was like, we're gonna do this in Vermont. It's gonna be sick. And
Fun,
like we have these
fun.
Blazar anamorphics, and he's gonna
Oh yeah,
start.
yeah, those are cool.
Yeah,
Those are
he's gonna
cool.
start going back and forth with the FX3. I'm like, dude, you already. It's like the movie's been out for a month, and he already like wants to
I
reproduce it.
love
It's
it.
so
That's
fun.
awesome. That's
That
awesome.
movie is crazy too. I don't want to go too off
Yeah.
course, but like the production in that movie. That movie made me an F1 fan, by the way. I was
Oh,
not
cool.
a
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
was
yeah.
not an
Awesome.
F1 fan. Now I
Awesome.
started
Yeah, yeah,
watching Drive to Survive, and now I'm
yeah.
getting all familiar with all the.
It's a deep rabbit hole. My wife a little while ago, jokingly was like, she's never been into sports or
Mhm.
any of that kind of stuff, and she's into a particular driver and team, and like there was some heartbreak, and she turned to me and she was like, "I'm so mad at you. You got me into this. I'm all my feels now, and I like give a
Yeah.
shit, and like I don't like how this." And I was like, "Welcome to the club. Like this is watching sports, you
I
know."
think it helps that they do the documentary though, because I
Oh
that has
yeah,
really
yeah, yeah,
sparked
yeah.
my interest, and I also think like I don't know some people that like it. I didn't think they would like something like that. I'm like, why would
Mhm.
you like fast racing cars around in a circuit? And I'm like, there's
Yeah.
so much that goes into it. It's absolutely
Yeah.
crazy.
It's a deep rabbit hole. And trust me, it continues to give. You stick with it and it kind of like every year you learn new things. It honestly feels her and I talk about this sometimes, but it like feels like filmmaking sometimes in a sense where it's like there's just always something more to learn. There's always something more to sort of discover. And it's not
Hmm.
just sort of the same old all time. It's always changing. It's filled with a lot of technology, a lot of passion, and it's ruthless. And it's my two passions in life are film and motorsport for sure.
Nice, cool.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about some upcoming films you have. You have a lot of films coming out
Yeah.
this year, and I think next year as well, if I'm not
No,
mistaken,
no,
or it's just this year.
just this year, dude. It's crazy. Three films in a 4 month period, which is that's never happened to me before. That's just it's a bit of a coincidence. It's a bit of a I think a little bit of like the strike pushing things in a
Yes.
way and like things condensing in a sense. But either way, it's happening and it's really cool.
So, I want to sort of, I guess, target two of the films, Descendant and London Calling. Um, for Descendant, first, I just want to get like a brief synopsis for the obviously the audience for the actual film, but also I want to talk about how do you adapt your style, because that has a very distinctive look. How do you adapt your style from like project to project and like be fluid with like, okay, this is like my look, this is Alex's look, and how do you maintain that looks authentic to you while doing all these different projects?
Yeah, first of all, I have no idea if I have a look. I kind of that's something I struggle with in terms of that. Like, I have a buddy. He's big on social media. I'm sure you know him, but Oren Soffer,
Mm,
who said a little while ago, I saw he was doing an interview, and I think he nailed it, where he's sort of talking about how like what is one style, that it is taste, which I think is I liked that because style changes every project, but you as an individual have a certain taste, so that kind of dictates what you gravitate towards. I thought that was a very elegant way of putting that, and I had to steal it from him because I'm like, you nailed it, dude. So I agree with that. But yeah, it just Descendants really cool. I think the movie's great. And trust me, I've shot movies that aren't great, and this one is very good in my opinion. It's basically a psychological horror, I would call it. And it's sort of a is this guy going crazy type movie where this couple are on their way to having a kid, and so a lot of the film is sort of like the fear of becoming a parent. But the genre twist is that he's abducted by aliens, and basically what the movie is it's sort of like a was he actually abducted or is he losing his mind? And that's kind of the journey that you go on through this sort of relationship drama of dealing with a pregnancy potentially going wrong, is what the movie is. And it's very good. But it is like it's like an indie sci-fi,
mhm,
low budget sort of gritty, psychological horror. Um, but I had a great time making it. It was really, really fun. And yeah, the guys involved with it, they wanted me to push it and go for it and be bold. And they were into being aggressive with lenses and texture. And again, we did pretty heavy film grain and that kind of stuff. And because we wanted the movie to be have like a dirtiness to
mhm.
it. And then the director and I talked a lot about we started with like kind of a color theory thing too, where like this sounds really basic, but it's like, wife and home was like, warm and orange, and aliens were like green, like which again sounds like so simple. But my job, I think, was to take that and kind of do it elegantly in a way that felt genre, felt grounded, and not forced and tacky. And I don't always feel this way, so trust me, but on this one, I feel confident and I feel proud of the work that I did in terms of taking that home and doing some pretty fun stuff with lenses in terms of yeah, there's a couple of tricks that we pull that kind of are pretty aggressive, but are all motivated by character and psychology and sort of what's happening. Like there's certain moments where he gets triggered by things, and we do stuff with tilt shift. I had a 50 0.95 lens. It's like super shallow.
Mm.
That's like there's moments where certain things happen and that those repeat. And there's sort of signals to the audience about sort of things to react to. And then also just making it like it's supposed to be this guy's like losing himself. So to sort of have the world around him deteriorate in a
Yeah.
way was really fun. And look, also, frankly, like I would say this right in front of the filmmakers too. It's a low budget movie. So it's like, you have to find ways to do those things. We don't have like crazy visual effects or whatever else. So it is more actor driven. Close ups and sort of I can bring tricks and things and filtration and all sorts of stuff to sort of bring that home in a way. But it's a cool movie. I think it's one I'm really proud of.
Well, that's another thing, talking about like it's a low budget movie, that phrase, a lot of people deter from getting ambitious if they don't have a big budget. But I think a lot
Yeah,
of the times you can just adapt your taste to whatever budget you're working with, and you can
I
make
think so. Yeah,
some great stuff with any
yeah.
budget.
So I totally agree with you. I think it's just more so about what is the ambition of that script and sort of our people. I've been in situations where people are incredibly unrealistic about what we can do, and Descendant is a great example, and everybody involved with it should be proud because it's a good example of like the script is within the realms. We pushed it. We were super ambitious, and we definitely like pushed the boundaries as you do on any film. But then also the producers were really good about setting us up for success. There's like certain scenes that are like bigger, and we kind of had a really good approach. I came to them early on and said this, and they totally agreed with me, and they gave me what I needed. But it was basically like, okay, these are a few big scenes that are difficult and expensive to do. Let's put the money there, and then the rest of the film we can kind of
Mm.
be a lot smaller and more nimble. Don't spread it out evenly. There's no point in doing that. The rest of these scenes are people talking in a room. I don't need much with that. But give me some toys and some things for these bigger to do sequences, and then my job is to make those look the same so it doesn't feel like two different movies. But that's producing, and I really appreciate that because the film is better because of it, you know.
Hmm. So I think like yeah, working within the limitations is great, but I think also like this is kind of a side note because you were talking a little bit about oh the script is getting a little ambitious at certain times. What does it take to get, the right investment just for like a script? Like I think it's so different nowadays, let's say you have a great story and you really want it to be, invested in and produced at the level you want to be produced at. But I think like is that dead where you cannot get like millions and millions of dollars from a script anymore? Like what have you seen with that?
It's definitely gotten lower. I wouldn't say it's dead. I have a lot of filmmaker friends. Some I work with, and some are collaborators, and some are people that my wife and I are just like, within our network or whatever. Um, I think there's less people getting it, and there's generally less money going out. But of course, there's, you see a handful of
Yeah.
A24 movies made every year. You know what I mean? Like it does happen. But it is, I think that pool has gotten a little bit smaller in a way. How you do it and how you navigate it, I mean, yeah, that's like,
Mhm.
I don't even know where to begin. That's a 4 hour discussion.
Mhm.
And again, I've watched my wife do it, so that has been, I think it's made me a better cinematographer too, because I have an empathy for everybody involved, including the producers. Or sometimes crew want to kind of make a us versus them thing, but I get to see behind the curtain and see the whole process from writing to raising the money to the difficulty with producers and distributors and salespeople and what they want and their agenda versus the film, and then post as a whole thing and the festival and the press circuit.
Yep.
And it's like I've watched her do it. She's made this like 5, 6 films now. It's grueling, it's intense. And truthfully, what's fascinating about the film world too is that it's constantly changing. It's certainly
Yep.
changed a lot in the past 5 years, from COVID to the strikes to streaming having the effect it's had. So there's really no one way to do it, because this, how we did it in 2018 is completely different to how it's being done now.
Mm. Yeah, I start to see that I think as I look up things and learn a little more. But about to send it. When is it coming out again? By the way.
August 8th, so very soon.
Oh, nice,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Only in theaters, which is cool. And then I believe it's limited August 8th to like New York, LA, like big cities, whatever type thing. And then August 15th, it expands to a wider market.
Nice, cool. I'd like
Yeah.
to be able to see it, maybe on Long Island. I could, go to
Yeah, no,
the.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
there'll definitely be. I'm gonna post, the
yeah.
information on Instagram, all that kind of stuff, share stuff, and yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one.
Mm. So the other one, London Calling, I actually
Yeah,
gravitate a lot towards the look of this film. I think it gives me like
yeah,
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood vibes a little bit. I don't know. I kind of like the
yeah,
colors in it. Uh,
yeah,
but I saw that it sort of the style was, based on logistical demands. There's like 26 shooting days, and you're managing weather. How that must have been stressful. I mean, we've gone over managing on set and time management, but this is a literal example of it. Were there any moments within those 26 days where it was starting to get this is crunch time?
Oh yeah, all time. It was
Yeah.
crazy. It was London Calling is nowhere near. I'm proud. Look, really fun movie too. That one's coming out September 19th. Only in theaters as well. I think it'll have probably a little bit bigger of a release. That movie looks, I'm proud of. It's a lot
Hmm.
bigger budget. It looks a lot bigger budget than it actually is. I will see in time if I can reveal what it was. We definitely punched above our weight big time. Part of that was also being in South Africa. Our money went further, but it's even more like it's so beyond. That filmmaker and I have done a bunch of projects together. He's great. I haven't said any names. I should say Descendant director is
Yep.
Peter Solella. Fucking awesome. His first time. Descendant is his first movie. He rules. Dave Lawson, Caleb Ward are the producers who did Descendant and are like were amazing. And then Alan Unger did London Calling, which I did Bandit with him, and the Uncharted fan film with him. And he's a very close friend. And I think him and I are going to be making movies together for a long time. But we kind of pull off the impossible type thing where both Bandit and London Calling and the Uncharted fan film are really low, like a lot lower budget than people think that they are. And we sort of really
Yep.
raise the bar, very ambitious. Um, Alan's tough too because we never have enough days. We always have a ton of locations. The scenes are super ambitious and he wants like a ton of shots. So we always make these jokes that we like. I'm not even kidding you. We do like 70 setups a day. Like it's like crazy what
Wow.
we pull off. Nobody ever believes us too until they're with us. Like I told the crew in South Africa a bunch of times, like strap the fuck in. And they were like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then by the end of day one, they were all like, oh shit. Like, what the fuck? So it's really intense and crazy, but the energies in the movies, they're really fun. London Calling's great. It's just like a really fun action comedy and it has heart too, which like no joke. I think he really sticks the landing in that regard. And in terms of the look, I mean, yeah, we wanted something really vibrant, really bold. I love like Tony Scott's earlier stuff, and then Dan Mendel is a cinematographer who works with like J.J. Abrams. He did like Mission Impossible 3, and he did the
Mm,
recent Twisters and all that. And he's and those two Star Wars movies, but he comes from the Tony Scott school where it's anamorphic and hard light and bold
yeah.
like crazy colors and all that kind of stuff. And I love that shit. And Alan really embraced that and we pushed it. And yeah, we just went for it and sort of went for a really like balls to the wall look. And like low sun as much as possible and crazy colors and just old school anamorphic stuff. I did something that I did on that movie that was really fun was that I got a guy in South Africa who was like an old school gaffer, and we just got like all old school tungsten lights and like mole
Nice.
beams and T12s and all that shit. And that's just like all we used during the day. And we melted the side of a house at one point, so we had like
Oh,
so many lights like firing
shit.
through. Yeah. We all smelled. We're like, what's that smell? And someone was like, oh shit! And it was like all this like
Yeah,
lacquer, and
yeah.
it was like dripping. And um, yeah, we like baked the actors alive on that, but they were all everyone was such like a everyone was awesome on that
Yeah.
movie. We had a lot of fun. But yeah, in terms of what you're saying with like the 26 days, it's crazy. Um, that's that kind of shoot when we're doing something that looks like a 15-20 million dollar movie for a lot less, and we are pushing it and doing action and shooting at the speed that we're shooting at, things can feel like you can get like a little dangerous and you have to be careful and sort of appropriate in that regard. We never got that close, but the point is you're sort of in that world at which you're sprinting. But oh yeah, I mean, almost every day feels like it's impossible. It's
Yeah.
really stressful and intense. And you're really pushing the boundaries in a lot of ways. But at the end of the day, um, it's a good movie. It feels really fun. No one got hurt. Everything was fine. And like it's just a fun movie. And I think Alan and I, the hope is that we're on our way to sort of leveling up in that regard and doing these movies that like I think like David Leitch does, like Fall Guy and Bullet Train and that kind of stuff. It's like that's sort of the camp that we want to be in, is just making these really fun popcorn, silly, but filled with heart and big laughs, but also violent, like it's like that kind of stuff.
I think that also is a testament to having a good director DP relationship that's going to last the test of time, right? And, do all these projects with. I think it's so important to have like that chemistry because you're working all these days, you're doing these tight schedules. Like you need someone that's going to be, on that same wavelength and energy as you. I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's,
We're like brothers basically. We like almost like bicker like I warned the crew too in South Africa. I was like Alan and I like are I'm not like this with anyone else, but I was like we like you guys almost might think we're like mad at each other or in a fight, but we're not. It's kind of Long Island in that way where you're sort of like you're
yep,
you're almost kind of like it's intense, in a
yes.
way, but it's all love and like it's because we're pushing each other. And I kind of warned them. I was like, it might seem a little intense to you guys, but like you'll see, it's just kind of how we are. And it was, I mean, it was unreal. Like that experience is, yeah, so good. Everyone had. It's really nice seeing even just like the South African crew, like the way they're posting about stuff that they're just like. It was a little bit of a magical experience. Like we had a really good time on that movie.
Awesome, dude. I love that.
Yeah.
So I've just two closing questions, I think, to wrap this up in a bow. And I think
Yeah.
these are very interesting questions because I think it's one question, but the two sides of it. The first side of it is, what's the worst advice you've ever received and why? And then the other is the best advice you've ever received and why that would be. Because I think it's also important to like pick out like, hey, like a lot of people say this, but that is just not true, or like bad advice
Mm,
versus like this is really good. This is like generally good advice.
damn. I should have thought about this before. This is a great question, and I should anyway. I one I'm just gonna say what the first thing came to mind because I'm sure I've got
Mm,
a lot of things. But I remember when I was probably like 22, I was on a shoot that was going really really poorly, and I think it was like operating or something. It's a little low budget thing, and things were going really poorly. And something came up where someone said something to the DP about something that was should have been changed or responsibility or some shift. And he basically kind of barked back like, um, DP's only here to make it pretty. I don't want it like, I'm not supposed to do anything else or whatever. And I remember I do distinctly remember standing there and hearing that and being like, I couldn't disagree more. And I don't want to be that guy. I do not want to just be concerned with just that image and just that it being pretty.
yep.
But again, it goes back to that holistic thing in a sense. It's like, no, like I'm part of the team. I'm part of the whole apparatus in a sense. Um, he was probably super stressed and he might have regretted it immediately. I don't know the guy, so I'm not sure. But it stuck with me in a moment. I remember standing there because he was older than me and I wanted to do what he was doing, you know what I mean? And I kept my mouth shut and was just standing there. But I remember, I know it's not advice, but I remember watching it as a
Yeah.
moment and going, no, I'm not gonna be that. I'm not gonna be that guy. Um, I want to be more than that. And so that just popped into my head. Um, and then yeah, best advice. I saw a funny Q&A at SVA with this older producer. He passed away, but he did like Gladiator and like Braveheart and all these big movies. And it's funny, they asked him, what's the best advice you've ever gotten, or what's the best advice you could give? And he had a long pause, and then he was like, wear comfortable shoes. And I remember that I remember laughing really hard and being like, that's awesome. But no, that's not the best advice, but I just thought
Hey,
that
I mean,
cracked
it's
me up.
true.
It's very
It's
important.
true.
Be comfortable, be comfortable. Oh,
I mean, I feel like the what you said first is kind of like a double edged, like worst and best advice, because it's like advice would be to be more part of the project, and then the worst advice would be like, oh, I'm just here to make it look pretty. That's your only job, you know. So it's kind of
yeah,
the
I
two.
think it goes back to what I was saying a bit about the other stuff, which is like give a shit and is another one I heard once was again just like a Q and A thing, and it was a similar type question, and the guy just long pause similar, and he was just like, "Don't be an asshole,"
Mm.
and I was like, "Great advice," like
It's the little
and
things.
I think so. It's be respectful, be good to people, but give a shit and push the boundaries, take care of one another, be safe, but push the boundaries. Like it's a really 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 fine line, and change it up and keep it interesting. This is such a major privilege to be able to do this for a living. It's incredible, like that you can make money and like live a life of going on adventures, places, and meeting people and getting close with them and playing make believe. Um,
Hmm.
push that, be bold, like don't be boring, like it's such a privilege to be able to do this. So to not push it and be daring, I think is a waste of that privilege. You know what I mean?
Because it's like it's almost like this is already such a wacky, you know, life to live too, where like you might as well just go balls to the wall, you know, in terms of
So man, like we're just making shit for, like, let's be real, like it's like for people to at best to sit and think and contemplate and change their life. And for a lot of the time, it's like, oh man, my fucking work sucks. I want to turn my brain off. So like, give them something cool, give them something like exciting and interesting. And people love Love Island, like that's great too.
yeah,
Like turn that on, just turn your brain off,
yeah,
like that's fine. But if they want to watch a movie or a film or whatever, that kind of can get them,
think
excited like we
yeah.
do when we watch shit. If it's, yeah, but it's anywhere from thinking to just to just having a good time. Like I think it's all relative, and I like being a part of that and kind of I was saying to someone a little while ago, like, can I make imagery that burns to the back of your brain? You know, like a buddy sent me a trailer and was like, "This looks sick," and I said to him, I was like, "I don't mean to rain on your parade, but I can't." Not a single image from that trailer like stuck with me. Like I close my eyes and I don't see it. You know, like I can't
Mm,
see anything. I see another trailer that like three, four images in it, just like I can close my eyes and I'm like I can just see them. And it's
yeah.
like, can you do that? Can you do stuff that when someone says to you, you know, in a bar, you hear someone says the name of a movie or you see a thing on a
Yeah.
TV or whatever, imagery like comes at you. I think that's the good shit, you know.
Yeah, I totally agree. This has been cool, man. Alex, I really appreciate you coming on to spread the knowledge, spread the wealth. Glad we're again able to get a Huntington guy on here. Hopefully, we can reconnect at some point, maybe when you're in the area. Um, but yeah, really appreciate your time today. This has been awesome.
Of course, man. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.